Hi, everyone. Welcome to another installment of I Effin' Love Cinema. As you can see, we're not really talking about a movie today. We're talking about a TV show called Kevin Can F Himself on AMC and AMC Plus. I know what some of you guys are saying, that it's TV, it's not film and all that, but I think personally between the MCU, the DCEU, and all these cinematic universes, all this constant reliance on franchises and all that. I think the line between film and television are just blurred, to the point that to me kind of irrelevant, right? Because some of the best filmmaking of the past like 10 years have come from TV. Let's be real here. Some of the best writing has come from TV. So because of that, I'm gonna go ahead and say this is fair game. Really great TV shows deserve to be celebrated because a show like, especially a show like this, by the way, Kevin Can F himself. So it's a pretty cool premise. The premise is that it's about this woman who is in a very miserable relationship with this seemingly lovable guy, and she wants out. And sort of the cool sort of film aspect of this show is that whenever Kevin, the titular Kevin, the toxic husband and all that, whenever he is like in the show, it's a sitcom, right? With like bright lighting and the four camera setup and all that, like sitcom style of writing, like that constant like joke and banter sort of style and all that. But whenever Allison, the main character, is by herself, it turns into a serious uh, drama essentially. And the show that this reminds me the most of, funny enough, because it was also an AMC show, is Breaking Bad, right? Because like Breaking Bad and this show, the sort of basic premise is that it's about people who find themselves in a situation that has a very easy solution, right? With Breaking Bad's a little more complicated, Like at least in the beginning of Breaking Bad, Walter does what he has to do because he needs money he needs money for chemotherapy. But given how that show plays out, we come to find out he had way more options than than he thought he did, or he really wanted to take advantage of. With this one, it's about Allison, who wants to kill her husband so that she can be free. That's the first episode and all that. And sort of like what's really great about these shows and this sort of style is that it's sort of like a great way to represent the sort of like undercurrents of who these people are. Like Walter is secretly a criminal mastermind who is fantastic at being a criminal, and all that. Whereas Allison, I think that when it comes to this show, what's really great about it is that it becomes a show about Allison, the main character, finding out what she truly has around her, learning to appreciate what is around her, her friends, her family, and all that. All the stuff that the Kevins of the world, the toxic people of the world, keep her away from in order for him to maintain his status quo and what makes him happy, which is why it's a great idea that it is like a sick when his world is a sitcom, and the whole point of a sitcom is that no matter how crazy the hijinks get, at the end of the episode you return to status quo. That's sort of the basic setup of every TV sitcom and a lot of TV shows as well. Whereas when you have a single camera drama, it is about the slow evolution of a character. So in a sense, it is essentially a show about Kevin, who is this person who has control over the people around him, because he is this like lovable schlub sitcom sort of figure. The kind of person that in American culture is sort of seen as the standard and all that. I mean, I think our generation's a little bit different, but when you look at like Gen X and Boomers and stuff like that, they're totally stuck on that like wife bad sort of thing where it's like this antagonistic thing where you wonder why the fuck are they even together? You know what I mean? And that's totally a dynamic that gets explored in this show. So yeah, like sort of break down, further why I think the show. By the way, I think the show is great. It's amazing. I'm recommending it to everybody, and I'm not going to talk any spoilers here, but I want to really talk about why I think this show is special. I think it's special essentially because it takes this sort of really, let's face it, kind of film schooly premise, right? In terms of the filmmaking and all that, it just really uses it to um, great effect in terms of developing the characters and the themes within it. You know, um, Allison is a fascinating character because she is an anti-hero, no different than Walter White. She is not a good person, you know. And this show, much like Breaking Bad, much like Mad Men, Better Call Saul, Ozarks, you know, Bloodlines, at least for the two good seasons it had. Yeah, it's about a character who is understanding her own dark side as the series goes on, and what this show kind of does with that journey is really really awesome. And you know, like this is one of those shows that benefits from being rewatched, because there's so many layers, right? There's so much hidden darkness in this show. There's so much like hidden like evil that is just under the surface, especially of the sitcom world. And what's really great about it is that Kevin, the titular Kevin, and Kevin Kneff himself, he sort of pushes that. He brings that out of people, you know, and he does it by being this super lovable, likable guy. And the show is very much a dissection of not just like that sort of person like in real life, but also how sitcoms and television and pop culture reinforce that and all that, and how it's easy for people to overlook the sort of like insidious sides of someone because they present themselves as very friendly and very likable. And what's really great is that like Kevin as a character, well, I don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say Kevin as a character, his whole appeal is that he refuses to change. He does not want to change, and he changes everybody around him to sort of stay in this sort of state of arrested development with him to make him as a person happier, to make his life easier. There's a constant running theme that Allison can't have a baby and can't have a pet because if she has those things, then all of a sudden Kevin is no longer the center of attention. And that's sort of Kevin's whole character, is that he needs to be the center of attention. That's why he is in this TV show setup, right? He is the main character of this sitcom world. And another thing that the show really explores, as far as like how these people exist in the real world, is that it kind of comments on the Kevins of the real world and all that. You know, there's a thread where he becomes intimately involved with the police, and there's great commentary about how people like Kevin are perfect for the police force and all that. They're perfect for politics also, because they rely on their likability and they're very good at it. And, you know, ultimately, if I really have to, and I'm sorry if I'm rambling a little bit here, I don't really script this out. And I just finished watching the last episode right now. So it's still kind of like, you know, I think I'm still processing it. So maybe I'll make it a more in depth video about this show some other time. But I think ultimately this is just a fantastic all around character study, not just of Allison, not just of Kevin, but like of the people around them, their friends, their family, and also like what it takes for people to realize what their worth is, and realize where their place in the world really should be, as opposed to where people like Kevin keep everyone. You know, Kevin in a lot of ways represents sort of the male ideal, right? He like there's so many in so many sitcoms, animated and like in person, whatever, in reality, whatever you want to call it. It's always the same setup. This schlubby, selfish guy, you know, who kind of acts on his own whims, has no problem manipulating the people around him, lying to the people around him to get what he wants, you know. And there's always just that wife, that put upon wife, who is just expected to look past it all and all that. And gosh, and yeah, and so we see that a lot enforced in our culture, in our American culture. And what I think is really interesting is how this show comments that it's those people who keep things the way they are, not just within our personal lives, but like within the sort of greater societal, I guess you could say, hierarchy. You know, it's that we do celebrate and enforce this type of person, this type of personality, as the buddy, as the buddy, the one we all want to go have a beer with and stuff like that. And so this show really kind of takes that down a notch in a very interesting way. You know, I highly recommend the show. I said this earlier. I think it's a fascinating exercise in filmmaking and character study, and also in social commentary. I think this show has a lot of layers to it. It's a show that I'm looking forward to seeing again now that it's complete Maybe when I see it again, now that it's complete, I'll be able to give a more in depth impression of it. But I just really want to, I feel like this show doesn't get talked about enough. I think it should be one of those shows that is part of pop culture, the pop culture fucking what's the word I'm looking for here, the pop culture canon, because it is just as good as a lot of like more highly esteemed shows. And it's sort of criminal that this show didn't get more celebrated. I mean, so the show creator had several seasons planned out for this show, but they only got two, and that's kind of a bummer. But it's also impressive because they didn't plan on the second season being the final season, but it forced them to really make the most of their time. And this is like, I believe, a 16 episode show that just tells this sort of grand story with a lot of layers to it in a very tight and succinct way. And I think, as much as I wished it was a little more fleshed out and all that, I think it's really cool how the second season takes all these makes this show really dense with subtext and all that, and really meld the character development with everything. Is just kind of like melded together in this way that's just kind of fascinating to dissect. So yeah, amazing show on AMC Plus. I highly recommend it. I really wish that it had more seasons, but I think much like The Expanse did in its final season, it took that challenge of having to wrap up this sort of great conflict as tightly as possible. And not only did it meet it, it kind of found some really creative ways to overcome that limitation. So yeah, if you've seen Kevin Can F Himself, definitely tell me what you think in the comments. And if you haven't seen it, please go see it because it should be watched more. It should be talked about more. And come back and let's talk about the show, dude, because this show is really awesome. So that's going to be all for this episode of IF and Love Cinema. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. I really want to hear from you guys in the comments, so please feel free to go comment on this, on any other stuff that I've done. These People Hate Cinema is back. I know I was gone for a week, but that's for kind of personal things. And now I feel like feel ready to go back to the way things were. So again, thank you everybody for watching. I've been Ed. You've been awesome. Have a good one.